ASDM CDSSI Code for Change 24-25, a social sector hackathon. This time, we will be building solutions on two themes, youth employability and climate resilience. Together with our knowledge partners, Esther Foundation and Common Grounds, we encourage you to find your team and register for your favorite theme. Scan the QR code at the CDSSI kiosk to register. We also have a kiosk by Goonch called Disasters, Myths and Realities, Witnessing Disasters Through Anshu Gupta's Lenses. It is a photo exhibition of the journey in the last 3 decades in disaster, a roaming exhibition with photographs and pictures from the ground. This can be spotted in the atrium area. Our student volunteers are in the room, and once the session begins, they will be distributing papers and post its for you to write your questions for our speakers. ISDM Center for Innovative Finance and Social Impact, CIFC, is launching a report in December on impact measurement that captures current practices and challenges of impact measurement in the sector. It represents perspectives of various M&E experts, practitioners, and not-for-profit organizations. Stay tuned for the same on the website of ISDM. Requesting everyone to please take your seats. May we request all audience members to please put their phones on silent for calls and notifications. Additionally, flash photography is prohibited during the sessions and plenaries. Our second session of the day in this track is titled To Talent with Love, Redefining the Social Sector's Appeal for Youth. This session is co-created by Lend a Hand India. The session is structured to capture insights with young, talented individuals on the precipice of entering the job market and exploring career options. It is crucial that they see opportunities in the development sector and view it as viable as any other sector. This session, thus, has been curated and put together to create a multi-stakeholder perspective on ways which are both sustainable and meaningful to the sector to attract young talent. We will be hearing from professionals who closely work with young talent and the voices of young people who have selected this sector. May I invite the moderators of this session, Divya Sharma, Assistant Manager, Lend a Hand India, and Deepika Goyal, Senior Manager, Lend a Hand India. Please give a huge round of applause for them. We are pleased to have Khushboo Awasthi, Co-founder and Chief Operating Officer, ShikshaLokam, Chandrika Bahadur, CEO, the Antara Foundation, and Prachi, co-founder and director, Safe Odisha for her. May we please have a big round of applause for them. Over to you, Deepika and Divya.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I think this is the last session before the lunch. So we will try to make it as exciting, as fun as possible, so that you really do not wait eagerly for the lunch, but get a lot of insights from the session. I want to start by sharing one quick observation I had. So today morning when I was taking flight from Pune to Delhi, I was going through my LinkedIn posts and news, and I read this news where Zomato founder Deepinder Goyal announced a job post for Chief of Staff. Anybody has heard about it? Yes. Everybody has heard. Oh, great. So you know the twist, that it doesn't come with the pay. Instead, the person will have to pay for a year 20 lakh rupees. And I was thinking, like, if Deepinder Goyal can do this, why can't Deepika Goyal can do that? Jokes apart, definitely, I mean, and when we were thinking about the session, we were thinking that how we can create a brand out of this ecosystem, the development sector. How can we start thinking and looking at development sector like a brand? And why I said if Deepinder Goyal can do it, because that I think shows the confidence that, okay, we are a brand and we can do this and attracted so many young talent. So how we can do that? And that brings to a very, very important question, and that's why this panel is there, that how to build a brand for the ecosystem, how to attract young talent to the development sector. I think since we are talking about attracting young talent, we could not have so many, I mean, all of them are young, including myself. But of course, we could not have so many young people on the panel, otherwise, we would have made an audience out of the panel itself. We thought that why not use technology and why not hear the voices of the young people to begin our session with, to understand and to know what they understand about the development sector in the first place before we start and dive right into it. So, can I request for the video?
Hello everybody. So we all know that development is very crucial for any nation at any given period of time. But what I want to know is like, how do you guys cater the needs of the population where there is so many differences, and how do you evaluate whether the programs that you have come up with it's gonna work and it's gonna be beneficial for the society as a whole?
Are there specific job roles in the NGO sector? And how are people paid? Is there any surety that you will not lose your job?
Hi. What I don't understand is, what does a career in the development sector look like? Are there defined leadership ladders like in the corporates? And what is the sustainability of the career in this sector?
Hi, as we all know that development is one of the major factors that drives economy. So I want to know that NGOs involved in the development sector, how do they earn profit and why do they work when there is no profit earned?
How does one know whether the nation is fully developed? What's the area that implies that a nation is fully developed?
Okay, we heard some of them, some voices and some communication. I think we all know some of those voices already. What are the jobs? Is it sustainable? How do we earn? I am myself asked, one of my very close friends, how do you earn money? Do you get paid enough to sustain? And all those questions are there. So I think in this entire session, we are going to talk less about the challenges. What are the challenges? Because we know them enough. We all know it in like abundance. So we are going to talk less about the challenges and more about what are those possibilities, what are those ideas, what are those approaches which can help the ecosystem build the brand, as I've been saying, and how do we attract young talent. Okay, so I'm disappointing you by saying this. I know if you are looking for to hear more challenges, we are not going to discuss those. And I request the audience to look at this session as a live brainstorming session where we are also going to discuss some of the ideas. So now we heard these young voices, and I would start with you, Khushboo. I would like to know the mantra that you have been hiring so many young people, right? What are those approaches which Mantra for Change has taken to attract these young talent? And also, because we have been working and there are so many organizations working for so many years, including yours own, are you seeing any change in the approach which the sector and which the organization is taking to attract the talent? So, twofold question, I know.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be speaking on such interesting topic, because usually these things don't get discussed. They only get discussed in a closed door. So, and it's also interesting to see how the room is full to, I mean, I'm definitely talent is one big problem, one big challenge. Let's not call it problem, a challenge that all of us in the development sector kind of discuss to say, how do we really get those bright minds, very, very passionate hearts to contribute to the sector? Because ultimately this is where the magic is gonna, get formed. So, our experience. First and foremost, thank you for playing that video. I think that's a very creative way of capturing the voices. It's every time you get asked this question that, "Arey, salary milti hai kya? Kamate kaise ho?" And believe me, I was there in Canada last year in a Commonwealth conference. And there are people who asked me, how do you make money? If there is no profit, how is it that who is then paying your salary? I mean, these are questions not only in the minds of the young, even the people who have, like, who are in their middle age and even senior, carry these questions. So I think misconceptions around every sector is a common thing, even around medicine, around engineering. I think first time I joined as a software developer, my parents were like, karogi kya? So it's okay. But things that have worked for us, Deepika, is I think first and foremost, I'm a science student, so my examples would come from there. Maths में concept होता है कि necessary but not sufficient condition. So I'll start with that. I think in any when we go for campus placements, just talk about the roles that exist in the organization. Purpose is that necessary and not, but not sufficient condition. Because anybody who's interested to work in development sector is definitely coming from a place कि मेरे को कुछ तो purposeful करना है. That core belief is there that my life has a larger purpose and I can contribute to improving the society. So that definitely becomes our first starting point to say, this is how this role or this work is going to impact, in our case, the learning experiences for children. In others, like for Lender Hand India, it could be around livelihood opportunities and others, right? So purpose is definitely one. Now, second, I think, and that has always been crucial to me also as a professional, and I think that's why it resonates with other as well, that it's not just a hobby, right? It's a full-time job that I'm taking up. That means I'm looking to build a career into this. So what are the different learning opportunities, growth opportunities that this particular role is going to offer me? I think we have to talk about it. We just can't say come join and देखेंगे क्या होता है, करेंगे क्या करना है. Is there that pathway that the top leadership of the organization is actually creating and making it very explicit? Sometimes it's there, but it is in our mind. We haven't taken the time to make it explicit. तो वो बहुत helpful रहता है कि at least you show that how, and also create multiple pathways. For example, some people love to manage teams. They love to work with people. But there are some who want to grow that in their technical expertise. Some want to be, become better in monitoring and evaluation, impact assessment, design, whatever. So are those multiple pathways being offered within an organization, and is that being communicated, told explicitly to the youth is very important. I think third important thing that has come out, maybe when I started working, it was not so common, but now it is. When we go to campus, people say, flexibility kitna hai? And it's not a bad question. Actually, when you are doing the work, you want to also plan your life around it, right? So I think flexibility is something that openly we have to talk about it. And COVID has shown that things are possible. So, and not only flexibility around working from home, but also around managing their own timings, right? Like, do I have to really come at 9 o'clock every day? Can there be common time? Like, one thing, my colleagues are also sitting here. One thing that we tried in ShikshaLokam was to say, hey, there will be a common time when all of us will schedule large group meetings, but then one-on-one meetings, people can schedule on their own preferences. Whether you are an early bird or a night owl, figure out. So having those explicit, again, policies or those structures really help. Having flexibility. How many I've already spoken? I think 3 points, maybe 2 more, okay? 4 is very important, and that occurred to me when I was just talking to a few friends outside this morning, that sometimes our work, because it's so serious, we are trying to solve some big problem, we become so serious. हर समय लगता है सर पे इतना बड़ा बोझ उठा के चल रहे हैं, I think fun, how do we make workplace fun? And really create that environment where people are, while you're solving big problems, you are trying to really work on ambiguous, very, very ambiguous situation, but can you have lively conversations with your colleagues, and can there be friends? And I am going to tell something which I believe in, and I know many people believe against it. There's a lot of gyan, lot of this line of thought outside saying you don't need friends at workplace. I really believe you need. Because if you have friends at workplace, you can discuss so many more things and you can get so much more done. So this artificial boundary of this is work, this is personal life, this is my life, and this is work. I don't know how many such boundaries people create in their mind, which leads to more tension and stress because it can never happen. Work is very much part of life. And so colleagues that are working with you are so wonderful, and they can turn into friends if we just create that space inside the organization. And that is something that has really helped us. When you said the word attract, Deepika, I think it's about getting people in and then retaining them. And if the workplace is fun, people love to continue. They will explore. They are open to then solve the challenges, provided they like the people they're working with. I think the last point that I would definitely touch upon is the salary, because we just heard one person say salary milta hai ki nahi, job surety hai ki nahi. I think we have to talk about it. And I think off late development sector, I mean, many of us, the organizations have done a good job, and even funding ecosystem has matured, have really shown that maturity to say, yes, people who are working to solve these big problems need better salary structures, need better pay. So it's still a journey. We are early. Like, obviously, we are not kind of matching the salary that a Google employee or a a Meta employee will get, but we are there. We are moving in that direction. And I always, as a person, as an individual, I always say this, that if somebody, a fresh young MBA graduate, is not shying away from asking for good salary when they are trying to improve the sales of Coke or cigarettes, I think we as a sector should also just stand up for ourselves and should ask for good salary when we are trying to solve real problems. So that's a journey, but we'll do it. We'll come to it.
I think very wonderfully put, Khushboo. I think out of all your, I think you mentioned 5-6 points, but 2 points I definitely want to get slightly deeper into that. One is flexibility. Because in development sector there are many organizations who are working at the grassroots level as well, right? So how do you bring, and then within the sector there would be in a way, if I can use that word, discrimination, right? Like, there are some people who have to be on the field and work on the ground and work with people, because our work is such that you have to work with people. We are working at that level. But when we talk about flexibility, right, so how to balance that? Because even we keep hearing about that, and at Lenda and India we certainly feel that people should work together, come to office and all that, but we also keep struggling about this element of, like, how do we really provide that flexibility? So if you can share some more.
I think there is no one standard answer to this, right? Like, because like you rightly said, there are certain roles that lend themselves better to having flexible work options. Like if you're working on some program design elements, or maybe on the fundraising or communications. But if you are on the field, if you're running a program, if you're implementing, you have to work with the community, with the government department. It's like so even in a corporate setup, there's something called a client side opportunity, right? So when you're working with a client, you operate with their work schedules or their whatever, their policies and structures. So here also we do that. Like our team here work with the Ministry of Education. They go there, they have to be there, because some conversations can't happen over Zoom call. But having said that, we can be creative around these things, saying there can be these very supremely busy period when you have to be present on ground. But then for those team members, the organization has to take that call, that when there is lull period, when the work is not so much, can you even give them that option that, hey, you can choose to work from wherever you are, or you can even work for reduced working hour, because we know that you've extended yourself on other days. So things like, what is that called when you work on weekends and you take that leave? Compost.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah. So you see, and I personally believe, see, the reason I am not able to even remember that word is because I don't know how many weekends I've worked, but I don't shy away. If today I'm not feeling like working, I'll call my team and say, hey, there's nothing very major on my calendar and I would like to just take off. I don't have to go and apply somewhere saying that it's a comp off. So is the organization behaving with that trust, right? Because if you, and again, going back to the point of attracting and retaining, if you introduce so many structures and so many policies in the organization, it becomes really, really backbending. So can we create that environment? we are here trying to solve a problem. We are trying to build trust with the community, with external stakeholders. Why can't we operate with the same level of trust internally? So I think flexibility, to answer your question, it's more about on the in that particular situation, can the team come together and decide what flexibility means for them and what would they want to see? If they are able to design it for themselves, I think there's a lot of ownership, and then there is a lot of responsibility also. Otherwise, I feel somebody else has designed that policy for me. Why should I care? Hey, what you are designing is not relevant for me. That's the first resistance that we will face. So I think that works.
No, I think that's very interesting point, that flexibility is not, it doesn't come on its own. It has to come with trust and the reliability as well. So even I think equally employees and the team members also have to work. So it's organization and the team member. I think it's one in any case.
One point there, if I can add, even in our program design, we always feel that when you are designing something, you are making certain assumptions. For example, all the top design interventions get done with the assumption that जो grassroots पे है, उसको पता नहीं है क्या करना है. हम बताएंगे क्या करना है. Similarly, in the team or in the organization, if we can, I'm not saying there's no need of policy. Obviously, you will have, as an organization, everybody will have policies. But some of these questions, when they come up, are you designing the solution with the people? Is the going in belief there that people who are on my team, they are responsible people? They have chosen to be here. That means they respect the seriousness of the job, and hence what they will decide around such flexibility or these questions of autonomy, they are genuinely coming from a place of care, and they will help us arrive at the best solution. So that's the assumption that I would suggest that all of us should go in with.
No, thank you so much for your perspective, Khushboo. I would like to have quickly Chandrika also speaking about these things, that what approaches have your organization? I know you've been running fellowship also, so if you can quickly share your thoughts about this, like other approaches of attracting young talent.
Thank you, Deepika, and lovely to be here. A lot of, Khushboo, what you said resonated. So just a quick brief. At the Antara Foundation, we are 72% under the age of 30. So I am an extreme outlier. And about half the employee numbers are between 25 and 30. So it's a very young organization. And for me, that's a source of incredible pride. I have a bunch here. Guys, can you put your hands up? Okay, so you can all talk to them afterwards on what it's like to be at Antara and be a young team member. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a few themes that Khushboo spoke about. The first one, which I think is really important, particularly in a grassroots organization, which is what we are, and we're a decentralized implementation organization, so we have teams across multiple rural districts. Young people are coming in droves, choosing to want to work there. And, to me, that is an incredible development, which was not the case when I was graduating, right? When I was graduating, there were a few very set paths of careers that, you became an engineer, or you became a doctor, or you became a lawyer and a CA, and it pretty much, the imagination stopped there. So we do run, as you say, a fellowship, which is fresh graduates. And so about 50 of our staff members, Antara Foundation's their first job. So that comes with its own set of challenges. But, when we bring in the fellows, I interview everybody. The last interview is with me. And I am struck because I do the opposite. I keep trying to, dissuade them. I'm like, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage? How are you going to live here? You've never lived in a small town before, and how are you going to do this? And I am always blown away by the responses that I get, because the responses that I get are along the lines of, I want to contribute. So there is a purpose, very strong sense of purpose. But I would say equally, there is a very strong sense of adventure and curiosity. So there is a sense that this is the stage of my life where I can take a risk. I want to do something different. I want to try something I've never done. And a lot of young people tell me, these are 20, 21-year-olds who tell me, I want to push myself out of my comfort zone. As a concept, that's a very sophisticated concept. And to me, the bravery, the courage that involves in terms of being willing to take that risk is massive. So, to come back to your question, what does that mean for us as an organization? The responsibility that it puts on us is multifold, right? So the first responsibility obviously is safety, right? So we try and create a safe, secure space where they are exposed to things that are very, very different. And we see that. We see a huge appetite to go out and try and learn. There's a real thirst for both learning as well as for experimenting. So as an organization, we keep talking about what is it that we can offer to young people. I think what I have learned at my time at the Antara Foundation is how much we learn from them in terms of what they're teaching us. And the first thing is, every batch of young people that come into the organization, for a little while they give us hell on what we're doing, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why does this make sense? Why does that make sense? And to me, this is how an organization stays alive, right? Because you're constantly questioning yourself and you're constantly evolving. So there's that newness, that freshness that comes in. In return, there obviously is a need to balance this kind of open curiosity and open learning with structure, with a focus on outcomes. And because for so many of them, this is their first professional environment and professional experience, I think what we owe is to create an environment where they learn how to work as professionals, because those skills are transferable. They're transferable across sectors. They're also transferable from the social sector to the corporate sector. And I do think there is an artificial divide here. There is a sense that people who come to the social sector stay in the social sector. But it is our belief that if you are a professional organization and if you're run professionally, if you teach people how to work, how to solve problems in a analytically sound, sensible way, those skills are eminently transferable to the corporate sector, to media, to anything else. So I would say that for the opportunities that come with hiring a lot of young people brings with them a lot of responsibility, particularly as the first employer of choice. But it is very important to give some structure. It is very important to teach. As Khushboo was saying, there needs to be a growth path that is spelled out. So for our fellows, they know that some of them will get absorbed into the organization, but the rest go on to have great careers in other organizations. And that is also something that makes us very proud. When we see our alumni go out and do great things in other organizations, that's a wonderful thing to see as well. And then the third thing, I think, is continuous learning. Because when people stagnate, that's when frustration sets in. That's when they want to then do something else. I think that learning component also has to be very carefully built in. And I think the last bit is, I'm going to add to the necessary, not sufficient. I think compensation is actually necessary but not sufficient. I agree with Khushboo that we need to pay well. I would add to that, we need to pay well at the entry level. That is very important, because that is where people make choices that often put them in different paths. And generally, organizations tend to overpay at the top and, sort of not focus so much on the bottom. And I actually think we need to really make sure that at the starting level, people don't have to make difficult choices. I mean, there'll obviously be differences, but it shouldn't be a difference that makes you say that, okay, this is off the table for me. So it has to be comparable to that. And beyond that, it is everything but compensation, is how I would put it.
No, I think very interesting point that the organizations really need to think about how they are paying people at the entry level, and that's what will maybe attract people. That's what maybe will make them think that, okay, they can make careers. I want to move to Divya. Since you talk about fellowship, Divya yourself has done fellowship and chose to be in the development sector. I think you have now experience being in the sector for the last 8-9 years, if I'm not wrong. And I understand you started your journey with that jazba and motivation. Yes, I want to work for the cause and I'm here to change the world. Is it there still? Or anything else which you are also looking for from the development sector as a working professional? These two spoke more from the organization and leaders' point of view. I want to hear your perspective as well.
No, I think sitting on stage here, I think I should definitely say yes, that Jazba is there. Otherwise, people will be like, why is she even there? But yeah, I mean, I entered the sector through a fellowship program, and I think that commitment to cause, that change and all, and I think I was also exploring at that point of time as to this is an area where we, I can be and contribute more, and hence chose to do a fellowship there. But I think after a point of time, I think after spending 2-3 years understanding, exploring the ground realities, um, I think I definitely wanted more, and I remember that at that point of time there was this a little sense of guilt also. So I think what has happened over the years is that that guilt has gone. So while I am there, definitely a social lens is required. There is a commitment. I want to work towards a purpose. It's not wrong if I think about my growth and my, own journey in the sector itself. And what you have said, Chandrika, about the adventure, the sense of adventure there, and also the transferability of the skill within the sector itself. So it's not like if you're working in an organization up, you spend 10 years 12 years in one particular organizations and don't think about, okay, I can shift, right? So I think for me, there's this sense of, one, the segregation of course is there, but then how it is standing in a holistic sense together also. So to see a larger picture and how my own skill sets and how I am growing in the sector with the leadership skills, with the management skills, with all the kind of skills that are required in the sector, and how I can contribute to the sector holistically also, and how not think in that very narrow approach. So I think that clarity has been there as I worked, and spent some more amount of time in the sector. And then now, I mean, starting from a grassroots organization, working in a non-profit there, working in an NGO setup, being on in rural Bihar, working there, and now working with the government, right? And in a very different capacity altogether, and the very different kind of work altogether. I think the skills that I am also building over the years is also contributing to the larger ecosystem, and might explore, after some point of time wanting to explore maybe consultancy at one end. So there are a lot of domains within the sector itself that one can explore. There are international organizations, there are NGOs, they're consulting, they're working with the government. So all of those, there are funding organizations. So all of those put together, I think definitely. So I'm definitely not guilty about moving from one place to another, and so that's about it. And I think also taking those breaks, realizing that when I need to upskill myself, I think I quit a job when I did a fellowship. Then I worked for about 3-4 years in the organization. Then again quit my job and came to ISDM. I am an alum also, by the way. Upskill myself, learned some management tools, and now gotten into a different organization. And might want to work here for some more years and then try something new and learn more things and upskill myself and then go somewhere else also. So I think in totality, it's definitely a contribution to the ecosystem itself, along with that sense of purpose, of course. So yeah.
That's a relief to know, by the way, you plan to stay with the organization for some more time. And I definitely wanted to ask what next. I think you already answered that consultancy.
I said might be.
Might be. Everything is might be, right? Apart from what is happening today. Okay, so we heard what Divya shared about what, apart from that job satisfaction and that commitment to cause and other things. Again, we want to play a video, and we wanted to hear more voices, that what more young people are thinking and wanting from the development sector, that may give us more ideas what else need to be added and shifted and modified. So can we play the video?
आई थिंक यंग लोग फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी और फ्रीडम अपने सोशल सेक्टर के काम के जरिए तलाश रहे हैं कि जो चीज़ें उनको लगती है और जिस तरीके से लगती है, किस तरीके से वो उसको फ्रीली इम्प्लीमेंट कर सके और लोगों के काम आ सकें. तो ये एक चीज़ मुझे लगता है जो लोग तलाश रहे हैं अपने डेवलपमेंट सेक्टर के काम के अंदर में.
For a young person looking for a job in the social sector, it should be the same as any other job in any other space in terms of financial needs. You shouldn't be forced to sacrifice earning good money and having job security just because you're passionate about doing something for the social sector.
The payment disparity between a cubicle-based job and a field-oriented job is a minimum of 20k to 30k, which is a huge disparity. So yeah,
I strongly feel that there has to be some sort of autonomy given to young people in terms of how they are working or how they are performing their tasks. because obviously people do have their own styles and own ways of working rather than following a set pathway. So there has to be certain sort of autonomy given to them, and it will also help them to bring out their creativity, as well as it will also help them to develop their leadership skills, and they will in a way take accountability for whatever they are doing.
All right. So we heard a lot of young voices again as to what these people are, wanting from the sector, being in the sector. But when we talk about the young segment, we are also talking about people who are not from the sector, people who are, doing courses in different institutions that are not offering development related courses. And that brings me to my next question to you, Chandrika. Do you think there is a hesitation in terms of reaching out to institutions which are not offering development related courses? So while we are hiring from colleges like this, ISDM, etc., but are we not doing enough in terms of reaching out to institutions like IIT, IIMs, or other technical colleges, of course? And along with that, I mean, we just want to add as to how can we then bring the ecosystem together to, attract more young talent, irrespective of the education background that they come from. Yeah.
No, that's a great question, Divya. So I think there are 3 ways of thinking about it. The first is there is a natural evolution of awareness and acceptance on both sides. And one big channel, and it's a channel that we have found to be incredibly helpful, is the alumni channel. So the moment you have a few people in the organization from a particular background, whether that is a social sector or a non-social sector, you see that the following years, it's much, much easier. People just sort of, come on their own. If the first lot has had a good experience, of course, that's the caveat. But I think what that does is to create, so I think that is one, it's not necessarily formally the organization or the sector going and, making the case, but it is just creating spaces, whether they be for internships. We had an intern from an IIM this summer, and for a fact, I know that we will be going and, recruiting from there because that person went back and, told them his experience at the organization. So I think there's the alumni channel, which is a very, very strong one. The second is, the organization's requirements and preferences. So there are some roles and there are some organizations that require a background in the work that they do. We happen to be one, even though we work in public health and maternal health and it seems very technical, we actually are widely hiring from people who don't have that background on the sort of expectation that people will learn. Technical stuff everybody can learn. It's the attitude, the fit with the organization, which is more important. So I think there are both kinds, and sometimes some roles are specific to that. So I would say that there are a large number of roles that actually don't require prior technical expertise necessarily. For those roles, there should be no barrier, but it's also natural that you try to go to places where you have familiarity or where you are from or where the bulk of your organization networks are from. So I do think maybe there is a little bit of a hesitancy, but it's a false hesitancy from both sides. So, what we tend to do is try and go and do pre-placement talks in as many institutions as we can, irrespective of what sector they're in. And so we have now, I would say, over the last 2 or 3 years, a fairly healthy mix of people with a background from this sector, training for the sector, and people who come from very diverse backgrounds. It's a mixed bag. I don't want to kind of sugarcoat it and say everything is always perfect. So I think a lot of it depends on the individual's sort of mental flexibility to be able to also make that shift, because it is a different sector. It matters how professionally run the organization is, because then there are certain processes and systems that are similar to what they would expect or what they're used to. And that divergence also over time, I think, is reducing. I think organizations in the sector are far more professional today, far more structured than they used to be. Some may consider that a bad thing, but I think it's actually good because it means that there is a greater focus on getting things done more efficiently that are coming in. And so that is actually that when that work environment the difference in the work environment shrinks, then you will see that cross-pollination happen much more easily. Of course, there are always, I would always say that even now, people who go to a business school for a traditional MBA are opting by and large are doing it because they want a career in the corporate sector. There's another very interesting trend, which also I want to talk about, which I have seen personally. So I'm a business school graduate who never worked in the corporate sector. Probably the only one of my cohort that went straight to the development sector. I have seen over, a period of, I don't want to mention the number of decades, but enough decades, a lot of my batchmates are turning to the social sector, right? So they've done their corporate stint, they've reached, whatever heights they wanted to reach. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They've finished, getting the big house and the big car and the kids educated abroad. And now, coming back to the social sector. So that brings in a whole different ecosystem of people in the sector, and they have children, and they have young people that they have mentored. So that's another dynamic. So I don't think there's any one path. There are multiple ways to do it, as long as the basics up in place to give people a fulfilling experience.
And I think it also has to do with the need of the kind of roles that are there in the sector. So, we need more HR professionals, we need people from accounts, we need people with communication, and we need people in different sort of such backgrounds. So, yeah.
Absolutely right. I would just, put one caveat there, which is that, organizational roles will always be a small proportion of the program and forward-facing, the actual, the programmatic roles. So I think the openness has to be in the programmatic side as much, because you have to be willing to take in somebody who has been selling soap and trust that this person will actually be able to do the job. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Khushboo, do you want to add to that? Maybe 2 minutes.
I think I completely agree with Chandrika in terms of that. Definitely there are roles in the organization, like in my own organization, ShikshaLokam, there are also very focused technical roles around product development, actual coding, developing technology platforms. So now for those roles, we anyways go to engineering colleges, we go to these design schools that are teaching children how to think think UI, UX, right? So those roles exist, but if the question is more about how do you get these diverse talent into the main programmatic roles, the readiness has to be there from both the sides. So are the people who are opting for other courses, like I did my engineering, and then there was something that prompted me to say, I want to explore development sector and I am ready to give myself that learning time. Because then I can't expect that when I join say an education sector or livelihood or something else, I would suddenly be treated at par with somebody who has done masters in education or somebody who has done masters in your development management. So is the readiness there in that person's mind? Are they coming here with that kind of a readiness? It matters. Are they ready to learn, unlearn, and then learn? In terms of, is there hesitation in organization like ours to go to such colleges? I think it's also about, because and I speak largely for the ecosystem, everybody wants to optimize, right? I would not go to an IIM Bangalore for a campus placement talk if I know that at the end of the process, I'll hardly get 1 or 2 candidates. I would rather go to an Azim Premji University or an ISDM when I know that if I have 10 open roles, I can, in these 2 campus placements, I can fill 8 of them. Having said that, I understand. I also acknowledge that if it is about building the brand of for the sector, building the voice for the sector, we have to keep going out to more and more colleges. But maybe campus placement is not the best place to do that. It's about finding those opportunities where we as leaders go to those colleges and address the larger cohort when it's not the placement season, where we are talking about, hey, how great and how amazing work we are doing and what a wonderful team we are, so that they have that FOMO to say, "Arey, meko yahan apply karna chahiye," right? So there are other pathways, not campus placement necessarily.
All right. Now, since we're talking about having more diverse set of young people with different backgrounds. My next question is to you, Deepika. You manage a team of young people with diverse backgrounds, right? And we're talking about young people. There's a different segment also. So one, definitely the freshers in your team, right, who straight away come out of colleges. Then there are people who have had certain amount of experience in the sector, maybe 2-3 years, and then join the team. And then there's another segment of young people who come from corporate, right? In your observation and your experience of working with them, have you seen difference in terms of what motivates them to work in the sector, as well as how we can package the, I mean, think package is not the right word, but how we can bring the ecosystem together to attract these different segments of youth? So what works for them, and how can we bring in more such people, considering the diversity in mind? Yeah.
Oh, I think asking questions was the easier role. uh, so first of all, myself, I think moved from corporate to development sector. Okay, am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So I come from fashion background. Spent 4 years in the industry. Then I did my own startup for 5 years, and then started working full time in the social sector. So certainly understand those peculiarities and the need of people who are moving the sector. And good that you already categorize the young talent into these three groups broadly. One, people who are coming just fresh out of the colleges or just want to start in the sector. I think broadly, if I talk about these people and what we have seen, what we have observed, that regardless of the sector, be it development or corporate sector, I think young people want to work with organizations that are smart, that are innovative, organizations which have really good culture. I think both of them spoke enough about that, and able to present themselves creatively. So I think what change we see, and when we also started hiring at Lender Hand India, the moment we change our way of communicating about the hiring, right? Like the kind of messaging, the kind of posters, and I'm talking about very practical things here, right? The moment we changed that, we saw the shift in the number of applications we received. Okay, that is one thing. In fact, we have very famous list of 15 questions. In that, we ask variety of questions. You yourself have gone through that. Like, have you ever run away from the family? अपने कभी plant को grow किया है क्या अपने आप से? Or have you done something and failed something which you are proud of? Can you calculate 16 multiplied by 18? Can you calculate quickly 16 multiplied by 18? No. Okay. So these are the questions which are part of our hiring process, right? And I think these are the elements, if you add here and there, helps people to understand and know more about your organization, the way you function, the way the kind of culture is there. So I think that is one thing which I really feel strongly that that works in case of young people, because they also want to work. The sense of purpose is definitely a common theme, a common because otherwise to काम ही नहीं करेगा. I think in the morning session when Shamika ma'am also mentioned this case. Great. Okay, it's okay. I'm back. It's similar to what happened in the Amir Khan session. So okay, let's see that some similarities are there. So I think that's what for the people who are just entering into the sector. I think in case of people who are moving, and I think both the categories I'll put in one, have moved from corporate or have spent some time in development sector, a lot of word of mouth works a lot. Like if these things are in place, like flexibility, good culture, career pathways, I think what Khushboo mentioned, that we think about it, but we don't communicate enough. And I'm talking, I think, overall the point of communication, that we are not communicating enough, that we communicate about the challenges we are working upon. We communicate that, which has to be there, of course, the cause which we are working upon. But we don't communicate enough about the career progression. We don't communicate enough about how this organization can help you as an individual grow. internal communications as well, right? So I feel that if we can work on those communication, and when people are knowing about it, that helps, of course, to take that decision that I want to work with an organization. And then retention is the second point, that how do you retain those individuals. I also wanted to bring one point, that because right now, I think in the entire conversation, we are saying corporate versus development sector, and I am here representing both, so I have to speak for both the point of view. But I keep saying that both kind of ecosystem can learn from each other. While corporate definitely can learn the compassion and empathy part, we are working for humans and individuals and not only about running up behind the profits. That is also important, by the way, so that development sector is able to function. But at the same time, what development sector can learn from the corporate, and that's where it's important to have some of your team members coming from that sector, so that you can learn the importance of the processes, structures, systems, all these things. So flexibility has to be incorporated, but I think these things also have to come in place. So yeah, that's what have been the experience so far.
So, I mean, first we discussed so much about what about young people, attracting young people, what organizations need to do, and all of that. We have Prachi with us here today in her initial years in the sector, young leader and a student at Ashoka also. I have a very interesting question for you, Prachi, as to what kind of conversations happen within your peer groups and within your colleagues about the different organizations that are hiring young talent, right? So are there any disappointments with respect to the sector also? And along with that, if you can also mention that if you had to recruit young talent, what would you do differently?
Sure, Divya. Thank you so much for asking that. So first of all, I feel like I come from two very different worlds. I'm from Odisha and I have a peer group there. And currently I'm studying in Ashoka where I'm building a new peer group. And these are two very different worlds and they have their very different struggles as well. With Odisha, there is more of an entry barrier where there is lack of awareness about the social sector. There are questions about the security in this job. There are questions about if we have the right skill sets and how can we enter this job. Those are the main questions I hear coming there. And then in Ashoka, because mostly children are coming from tier 1 cities, they are more aware of the opportunities and they know that we can easily find an opportunity near our home itself. Meanwhile, for a tier 2 or tier 3 child, they have to migrate for that opportunity. Since in Ashoka people know how to enter this such opportunities, they are more concerned about the career pathways. How can we they raise the question of stagnance and how can we develop. They know how we can work for 2 years and then go for a master's in public policy and then jump to an international organization or a consultancy. So these career pathways, these are the questions that we spend time thinking about at Ashoka. Next would be what would I do different? I would say hire local. Many of us mentioned about how embeddedness is a very crucial thing when you're working in social sector. And hiring local, this suggestion is coming from someone who herself started her first job at Maharashtra. But then I would still say that when we are thinking of hiring local, we usually hire local people for field worker roles, not for programmatic roles. So I think we have to consciously question our biases on what is that ceiling which is not letting a local talent join a big higher role. And there I would bring in my second point, that we should hire from tier 2 and 3 colleges. We should focus there as well, because there are handful of tests and ISTM and APU, and most of us have studied in government colleges. Then it is the failure of the public infrastructure which has not provided equal access to education for everyone. So, and when we are selectively focusing on a certain number of colleges, we are furthering that employment gap that exists in India. So I would say I would hire from tier 2 and tier 3 colleges, because we should be checking intent over looking for that eye-catchy word in the CV, which many of the young people also have to focus on, because we know that in a when someone is shortlisting our CV, they'll look for institutes or internships. We are not aware of if in that geography is the concept of internship existing. And especially in social sector, most of all of the internships that I have at least done, and I have done 15-16 internships before I joined, so all of them were unpaid. Who can afford those unpaid internships, especially in India, at least, like, yeah, that is one question we have to constantly think. Third, I would say standardized testings. At Ashoka, because placement season is going on, I see a lot of like social sector organizations coming and they do aptitude test. Who is aware of how that test, like how to operate a computer where you have to give that test, which is like fully focused on maths? What if you're interested in a research role or a government like stakeholder focused role? How does math help me there? So standardized like testing has never worked in education. Why are we using it in employment now? So that is like another thing. Like, how can we make it more holistic? How can we have like skill-based testing, psychometric testing, more human? Like NGOs are becoming corporatized, and that has to like be there for work efficiency. But some part of it has to be very like humane, where you're constantly questioning your prejudices and constantly filtering out your own biases before like looking forward. My last would be to retain young talents. Like not everyone, like those who are aware of their career pathways, believe me, they'll find their own way no matter which organization they are working at. Those who aren't there, for example, when I joined Lend a Hand India, I did a BSc chemistry, and then I was a field worker for some time, and then I joined it. I had like, I wouldn't say I had any skills, but you grow it. Like Excel isn't a big thing. Power by BI, everything, like we can learn it within a month. But then the intent, the purpose, those things have to be there. And also who is able to articulate it. If someone is not able to articulate it, how are we gauging that? Those things I would say we can look at it. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's very insightful, and now everybody knows why we call Prachi here for those candid thoughts, of course, unfiltered responses. I saw you also smiling in between. You wanted to add something?
So excellent points, and I just want to add one thing. You know, when we've been talking about diversity, we've been talking about business background, corporate background versus social sector background. I think there is a little there's an insularity in this sector where we want to work for the development of the country, but as organizations, we are very ill prepared to absorb people from very, very different backgrounds, including people from backgrounds who are, first generation learners, first generation workers, never stepped outside of their villages. And as an organization, all of us actually, I think, are guilty of that. We tend to hire people who we think will fit in, who look like us, who talk like us, who've been educated in places where everybody else has been educated, which are the development training institutions of the country. So part of the onus of this is on educational institutions to widen the base of, the intake. But a lot of that responsibility is with all of us to make sure not only that we are hiring from communities, places, people that reflect the reality of the work that we are doing, but that we are finding pathways to recognize equivalent and complementary skill sets. So not expect everybody to be able to do the same things. And as organizations, be able to balance that out and give everyone a welcoming and a fair chance at growth. That's a very difficult thing to do. And I think most of us are not even at the first level of that. So that's a reality of the sector. We are a sector for the development of the country, but we are not very good at actually being inclusive as organizations. And I think that's a correction that's needed in the sector itself.
I think that's a very, very important feedback actually for the sector itself, because the first few names that come to our mind when we want to recruit from any organization, for any organization across the country, are just those few names that are there. Prachi shared about what she would do differently if she had to hire young talent. We have more voices of young people who are sharing what would they do differently if they have to hire young talent. Can I request to play the video 3, please?
So I would offer digital and hybrid flexible work, and also offer paid internships and fellowships that will improve the organization's perception and help in building long-term relationships with employees.
Hi. So one thing that I would definitely do is to do away with misconceptions and misinformation that people generally have about development sector. And for that, we need to change the dialogue from the need of just passion, zeal, and need for social change to what is in it for them, because the learning curve in this sector is as good as any other sector. Usually, the idea is corporate is much more demanding, and the skills that one person can hone are varied. And the same is not true for development sector, which is far from the truth.
I want to recruit people in impact sector. I will look forward for two qualities. First is negotiation. How will they able to negotiate with people from different spectrum, either the people who are living in rural, or it could be a government, or it may be a corporate house. Or second is adjustability. How they can adjust to different environment. How is their adjustability skill? I will look forward for these qualities. Thank you.
While hiring young minds, I would make sure that my interview panel has other young professionals who make sure that their voices aren't just heard, but they're celebrated. Furthermore, I would ensure that they have a dynamic learning curve to support their ever-growing personal as well as professional development.
All right, so this brings us to almost at the end of our session. So we've come a long way in this discussion, starting from what people think about the sector, some people who are not even aware about what development sector is, how do people why are we not making profit out of things, and then discussing about, what are different organizations doing to attract young talent, how has the strategy evolved over the years in terms of attracting young talent, and then reaching out to different institutions apart from the colleges and institutions offering development related courses, and what are the loops that exist there, what are the gaps that exist in our own strategies, and maybe we have not even strategized it enough in terms of hiring diverse talent and spectrum of young people. So that's about it, and maybe just last few 1 minute each in terms of any closing remarks that you have to end this session up. Yeah,
I would suggest, if we have time, if there are questions.
yeah, Madhumita, do we have time? I see the clock ticking 3:30.
We can take two.
Yeah, so if there are any questions, one or two, we have 3 minutes left for us. So yeah.
Hi. First of all, congratulations to the one who decided the main title, "To Talent with Love," which was a very. I work from a place of love, so that's why I was like, I'm going to this. Nonetheless, I run this company called the Kind Citizen (TKC), in which we do a lot of active citizenship and volunteering based programs. The one challenge that I've been noticing, and I have a question to anybody who's running an NGO or the panel as well, when we hire young talent, they come with a lot of passion, purpose. But when we talk about targets, when we talk about discipline, of bringing discipline into that passion, young people have the tendency to go back or to resist. How do I deal with that? I have no answer. I am sorry, but I need answers. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that also. Maybe one or two more questions, and then can speak collectively. Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for your thoughts. I had a question. So, a lot of the external motivators that you mentioned for young people, sense of adventure, the sense of flexibility. For me personally, they're more of an urban narrative. I have been recruiting young people over the last 3 years in a tier 2 city. In a tier 2 city, what I have observed is that the traditional motivators which existed maybe a decade back, they are still there. A government job is still considered to be the best, and there in those cities or in those places, we do compete with the traditional motivators. So, like to ask, in your experience, how do you cater to that? Because the motivators that young people look for, they are also very diverse in a country like ours.
Okay, maybe one last question, if there is any.
Thanks. This is a really lovely conversation to listen in on. My question is, so the attrition is fairly high in the development sector with younger people, and the question is about how much do you invest in a young person joining the organization, knowing that they're here for a finite number of years and that they will move. How do you sort of balance that out? Thanks.
You want to start, Chandrika?
So great questions, all of them. I'll start with the third one. I think, look, attrition will happen when they're very young people because they want to explore and do other things. So the first thing is not to take it personally. It's a good thing if they want to explore. I think one has to invest in all the young people who join, right? That you can't kind of limit that in the fear that they will go away. So I don't think that's a choice that one can make beforehand. And I think if you create a good environment, people will stay for longer. So that is an investment that's worth it anyway. And if they go somewhere else, that's, that carries with them. So it's a good thing. I think your point is absolutely right. I think this is it is not just an urban, but a tier 1 aspiration more than any other. Having said that, I would say that there are enough young people from tier 2, tier 3 cities also who would like to exercise their sense of adventure and curiosity if their material needs and aspirations are met. So that seems to be the main, it's in their worldview, there are only a few things that give them secure financial security and a path. If we are able to communicate that you can have all that, then I think they have the same level of adventure and desire to explore as anybody from anywhere. But, there are realities that people have. I would say people who we hire who are from the community that we want to serve, and we work in tribal districts in Madhya Pradesh, I think they have a different sense of motivation. Their sense of motivation comes from wanting to give back to their own community and seeing their own community prosper. So that's a very different motivation, and that's a fabulous motivation that, we feel very honored if we're able to provide a space for that to grow. So I do think it's different given context, but all young people are curious and all of them want to flex their muscles and do different things. And I think to the first question about the sort of tension between passion and discipline, I think that is exactly the textbook definition of being young. And there's nothing one can do about it except to gradually try and channel that enthusiasm and that passion. But if you overdo the discipline part, there will be pushback. But if you let the passion be unbridled as an organization, you will face those consequences. So I think that comes with the territory of being young.
I just have one point to each of it. So about the, because that we face a lot, right? And recently we started the 6-month of fellowship program to really understand that, okay, they want to retain, sustain in the organization or not, and even that gives them also an understanding, okay, they want to continue because they are young, right? And even when we need to go back to our times as well, when we ourselves were figuring it out things, right? Within the organization, there are multiple programs, multiple type of work and job roles and things are happening. So I think we need to create some initiatives or some programs which helps these young talent and young people to explore for a while and then to be able to make certain decisions. I know it comes at a cost, but that's where our, I think, ability to be able to design programs will come in the picture. How do you design that helps you to gain some outcome, of course, and help them to explore within your organization? So that's what I feel is something what we are trying. We can talk from the experiences. I think in case of people who are not coming from urban geography, what we have seen, and that's where we are seeing more and more people wanting to stay in their local areas. So to Prachi's point that we should think about hiring local more and more. But can there be some roles which are hybrid, which helps them to upskill themselves, which helps them also think about their career pathways and not only definitely the purpose of the job is there, but how do we bring those aspects is something which we can think about. That's what I feel.
All right. I think now we need to wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining this session. Definitely was a very insightful conversation. So thank you to all of you also. I hope everybody is taking one thing or the other from this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divya. Sincere thanks to our panelists and audience for this wonderful and interactive session. There's a lot for us to take back and work upon. And on a personal note, this is a very proud session for me also. Divya was my first student at ISDM when I started the role. As with all our events, the team at ISDM has put together a bag with a few items to capture our gratitude and our esteemed speakers and guests. A tree is being planted at Trees for Delhi by Grow Trees with ISDM. The bag also contains the book Samaj Sarkar Bazaar by Rohini Nilekani. This is an anthology of a journey into civil society and philanthropy. We also have the Data Indeed booklet put together by ISDM Center for Data Science and Social Impact, and A New Era of Giving, a compilation of essays and reflections by eminent philanthropists brought out by ISDM's CPID. May I request Simrita, Bricklayer ISDM, to come on stage and felicitate all our panelists as a token of our gratitude and appreciation, followed by a group photograph. Thank you, everyone. I request everyone to kindly proceed to the first floor for lunch, where you will get an opportunity to interact with your fellow delegates. The masterclass on unlocking the power of organization development, a gender-inclusive approach, will start at 2 p.m. in conference room number 1 on the second floor. We will meet here in Samrasta at 2:30 p.m. after lunch. Lunch is being served on the first floor in 2 venues. We request all our guests to make their way there and also visit many kiosks on display in the atrium. If you have any burning questions, you can leave your questions at the CDSSI kiosk.